What is going on, guys? Jason Burke here, Styles Clash for Life, coming at you on YouTube, and today I've got another edition of The Drive-In, where I watch recently released films and tell you guys whether they're worth watching, worth waiting for, or worth skipping altogether. Today I have a feeling is going to be one of my most divisive and divided opinions on a horror movie in 2024. I am talking about the long-awaited indie gore fest sequel, Terrifier 3. Everybody was waiting for this one. I talked in preparation for this last year at a convention to Damien Leone and David Howard Thornton, and they were buzzing about this. They said it was going to be super long and super full of answered questions from the previous films. So I came in expecting kind of to wrap this trilogy up. And then, of course, coming up to and approaching the Terrifier 3 release date, Damien said that if it made money in theaters and had the big release he expected, they would do possibly another one. I will come in here spoiler-free, essentially, as spoiler-free as I can be. It just came out on Thursday of last weekend, so I'm going to let you guys watch for yourselves and keep it as spoiler-free as I can while talking over important plot points. Terrifier 3 is a 2024 release. Written and directed by the same writer and director of the first two, Damien Leone, starring David Howard Thornton as the beloved Art the Clown, Lauren Lavera returning as Sienna, and Antonella Rose as Gabby. And the spoiler-free plot of this movie essentially is just picking up where the last one left off, as Sienna and her brother try to recover from the trauma of the last showdown with Art. We see Sienna now getting released from a hospital right at the beginning of the movie. No big spoilers, but reuniting with some family and trying to pick up her life and pick up the pieces of a bunch of physical injuries and mental hurdles to get over after Art, as we see somehow, someway, Art returns to showdown with Sienna, with some new family involved. Now, right away, we'll start with the positives in this. Gore. Gore is the biggest positive. This is the most simplistic formula that you're going to get in horror since the 80s sequels started. Since the Halloween and Jason and Freddy and Chucky, since all those sequels started in the 80s, you knew what the slasher sequels were going to be. Just a longer retelling of the first one. You're going to get the same kind of movie over and over again. You're going to get some of the things you know and love, the staples of that particular franchise. That is what Terrifier is, and I'll give it a positive for that. It's kind of a positive/negative for me, but I'll give it a positive for being a simplistic formula that knows what it is. It knows that it's going to cater to gore-thirsty indie horror fans, and I'm going to get into the big positive of that next, but it knows what it's going to be. It's going to be a quiet, pantomiming, over-the-top horror comedy character in Art the Clown, reveling in destruction and bathing in the blood he creates. That is what Art is. Those are the movies you're going to see. If you're going to see Terrifier in theaters, you're not getting elevated horror, you're not getting a complicated plot, you're getting a creepy character that is reveling in violence, and you're going to get a lot of gore. They did this gore maybe better if you're seeking gore and you don't mind over the top gore. They did it better than maybe anything in history. I know Tom Savini and Jason Baker from Pittsburgh worked on it. 4 or 5 other different teams worked on it. They had a big, long list of gore credits. I was going to write down the gore credits and give them credit, but there are so many teams working on the gore because they had so much gore in this movie. This is even more than you would expect from Terrifier. There were some really prolonged, over-the-top sequences that hold on gore shots even longer than Terrifier 2, which I thought might have been a little too much. So I think this one probably overstepped a little bit. But again, if you're coming in wanting those gore sequences and you're wanting Art to just bathe in blood, you're going to get that here. If you're seeking really unique and dusky and gritty gore effects, you're going to get it in this movie for sure. My personal biggest positive is indie horror in the theater. Damien Leone, David Howard Thornton and company did something really amazing with this series. Terrifier started as this really indie, low budget to no budget kind of movie that came from a segment in All Hallows Eve and blossomed into its own character and its own movie. And Terrifier caught the attention of people like nothing really has since like maybe Trick or Treat back in 2006-07. This turned into a quick cult following that picked up steam and then got bigger and longer with Terrifier 2, and now is getting a theatrical release that not only is getting into theaters and getting real time to develop, but is winning the box office. It's number one. It made over $1 million in other countries already. It topped the Joker, I believe, and became number one in its opening weekend. To go from meager beginnings in indie horror to grow this fast in a few years, and to become a national release that is getting so much acclaim and so much love from horror fans is really good for the genre. I will always, as an indie creator myself, I write indie horror books, I direct indie horror movies, I act in indie horror movies. I work with the local community here, and I have always wanted to see stuff on our level get bigger. They've got a little more money than our level, so to speak. But to see Terrifier growing like this and succeeding like this, getting in theaters and making it work for them is a very, very net positive for the entire genre of horror and indie horror altogether. I have Sienna's trauma as a positive. Well, again, I won't get into spoiler territory, but we see Sienna, we see Lauren Lavera, who I loved in the second movie. She was the biggest bright spot in the second movie, and dare I say the biggest bright spot in the third movie as well. I see Sienna struggling with her one-on-one kerfluffles with Art the Clown. You see her struggling mentally and being haunted by her past. That always works for me. It worked when Jamie Lee Curtis did it in the new Halloween series. It's always worked with me for Sydney in the Scream movies and the new Scream movies. Anytime you get legacy characters or returning characters coming back from traumatic experiences, I want to see their struggle. I want to see their de-evolution. I want to see their mental decomposition. I want to see the real effects and the realism of what it's like to watch people you love die and to have scars that will never go away from your encounters with a sadistic killer. Covered in scars you've done nothing to earn, you will always struggle mentally with putting that part of your life behind you, and they do that well. That's the best piece of storytelling that the Terrifier series has ever done. That's a big positive. To go along with storytelling that improves itself from number two, and I like how the series has progressed in small increments. The first Terrifier really had no story whatsoever, in my opinion. It was just Art killing people. The second one had a little tiny bit of story, mostly prolonged killings, but a little bit with Lauren Lavera finding her power to battle Art. This one goes up a little notch higher. Not much still in 3 movies, not much story. There's not much plot to get in the way of the blood here, but a little bit. Between Sienna's trauma and the brother character also returning, who does a nice job here, and Art, they kind of classify what Art the Clown is. They get into a little tiny morsel of his origins. Not nearly enough for me, we'll talk about it, but they at least kind of tell you a bit of where Art comes from. Again, it's not a big fleshing out. It's not going to answer questions. It's not going to give you an origin, but it's going to give you a little tiny bit more than 2 gave you. So they at least are building up a little bit. So Art's origin goes along with Sienna's trauma as good storytelling for me. Now to get into some cons. Number one, and I put this down as my last con, but I'll just talk about it now. This movie goes 2 hours and 5 minutes. Damien Leone initially had said to me in jest, and I wasn't sure if he was kidding or not when I talked to him, that this was going to be a 3-hour movie. And that got around. It made its rounds on the internet. Luckily, it's not 3 hours. It's not quite as long as the 2 hour and 25 minute Terrifier 2, which I thought was way too long. But this was 2 hours and 5 minutes. That, for me, is way too long for a basic slasher with little plot. Terrifier is not a movie that is story-based. It is not a plot-based movie. It is a character that creates kills. That's what you're watching for. I don't need 2+ hours of that. I don't need to be sitting in my chair with my poor spine struggling, trying to hold in going to the bathroom while I'm watching a basic slasher movie with very little story. The runtime is a little bit long for me. It feels like it's just marinating in scenes that are stretched out for no reason. And if they have all this time and they're not going to give us a ton of plot, you can make this an hour and a half. This could easily be, really a short film, to be honest, but I'm glad that it's a feature and I'm glad it's doing well. I would put this at like an hour and 25, an hour and 35. You don't need 2 hours and 5 minutes. You don't need 2 hours and 25. You certainly don't need 3 hours. So I think the length is a problem here. The length and the pacing for me, when you look back at certain scenes, they could have cut minutes out of some of these scenes and skipped a few altogether because they weren't really serving the plot in any real way. So the length and the pacing are negatives for me. All in all, I have the question mark here, positive and negative. This goes along with what I said before. Did this movie go too far? Was there gore for the sake of gore? Yes, there was. But is that too far for you? Well, the answer to that question is going to depend on your personal taste. Again, if you come into the movie going, I'm going to turn my brain off, I'm just going to watch art, make funny faces, and be menacing, and be silly, and be over the top, and saw people up and bathe in their blood and do funny things while they're suffering. If that's what you're looking for, you're going to love this, and you're not going to think it's too much. You're going to be happy with the fact that a gory indie horror film has made it to theaters, and that's really freaking cool. If you don't like senseless gore, and you either only like gore for the sake of your story, like me, I love gore, and I love a lot of gore whenever it suits the characters in the story. When someone is suffering for the sake of getting a killer over or getting a story over, then I think it's very worth it. Even a lot of gore. But if you only like a lot of gore to suit your story, or you don't like senseless gore in general, you think there's a line, or you think that gore, whenever there's no reason behind it, is over the line, you may not like this movie. You're going to think at least those parts are too far. You might look away. You might not even give it a chance. The series might not be for you if you're not a fan of excessive gore, or you don't like gore when there's not enough reason to support that gore. For me, I think, and again, I'm not squeamish. I didn't look away. I'm not offended by gore, so I enjoyed it for what it was. But I didn't think the story supported the amount of gore, and I thought they purposely reveled in a lot of gore for their own purposes, which is fine. Again, some fans are going to like that, some are going to hate it, some like me are going to kind of be ambivalent and not mind it one way or the other. I did think it was too much, but it did not offend me. I watched it and enjoyed what they were going for. I just thought they did it excessively with no supporting reason behind some of those scenes, aside from just torture on camera. Again, that answer is going to come down to you guys. That's my personal opinion on my personal taste of philosophy of story versus gore. Everyone's going to have their own feeling about it. But talking about Sienna and Art's origin now, I'm giving this a negative. I'm giving credit to an attempt at Art, a little tiny attempt, and I'm giving credit to Sienna's trauma being shown in this film, but they didn't answer any questions. They had 2 hours and 27 minutes last time to answer questions and didn't answer any because they were holding off for the end of the trilogy. This was going to be the big, long ending. They were going to build and answer stuff. They were going to kind of give you the backstory, is what I initially thought and or heard. But they didn't. They didn't really answer any questions. They didn't give us really a ton of reason as to why Art is what he is, why he is looking in particular for Sienna and their family, why Sienna has been chosen to be the one by Art and to be against Art by her family, why she has kind of become this hero, some of the origins of some of the things she got from the last film. They did use some flashbacks that were nice, and they did give you tiny little nuggets. But again, for a third movie, for a movie that's over 2 hours, they gave us very little reasoning for anything. And I get that not everything needs reasoning. Sometimes Art's just an evil clown and Art likes to make people bleed. I get that. But again, to have this much time and this many films in a franchise, I would like to see it start to really layer into some of the answers to questions. You don't have to kill the mystery, you don't have to over-explain, but just some of like, what started Art? What is he? Why is he tormented? Why is he choosing Sienna? Why has she been chosen to be the one to kind of stop Art? What makes her special? What makes their connection special? Let's build morsels, more than we're given, of these things to make them make more sense. Adding a little bit of story makes that gore and makes the style of these movies much, much better in my opinion. If I have a little more story to go with why this is happening, I can revel in that suffering or in those battles a lot more, knowing there's a reason for it. When I feel like I'm not being given enough with this much time, this is not a short film. This is a 2+ hour film that is the third in a franchise that's already gone plus 2 hours. So for this much time, I want a little more story personally, a little more steak for my sizzle. This movie has great sizzle, but with a little steak, that sizzle is so much better. I didn't get enough of the steak in this movie. More than 2, in my opinion, not enough. Not enough for the length. I'm sure we're going to get a 4th one. That's not a spoiler. You guys know that it's been kicked around already and that it's making money. So there's a good chance we're getting Terrifier 4 at some point. Not a spoiler, not a prediction. I just feel like it's going to happen. Yeah, long pacing and long runtime were my last negative. So all in all, again, this movie is going to depend on your taste. I like this one definitely better than 2 and probably better than 1. 1 I like better because the runtime's a lot shorter. But being more of a story, I like this one better. If this one was a little bit shorter, I'd like it a little more. I do think it's the best overall in the franchise. That being said, again, it comes down to your taste. If you like this style and you like art just killing people and enjoying the gore, you're going to love this. If you just want to support indie film and you like the art character, you're going to love this. If you want more answers and more story and more reasoning to fill this thing out, you might be disappointed by this. So I myself, and here's where I get lambasted, I'm going to give this film, on my personal taste being a story guy first, a 5.5 out of 10. That being said, I want you all to go check this out, unless you're squeamish. If you hate gore and you're squeamish, don't watch it. Otherwise, go check it out in theaters and give it money, because again, Damien and David and these guys, they're good people, they're kind, they're fun to be around, they're sweet. I really enjoyed my interactions with them. I've enjoyed our little conversations at conventions when I've been working across from them or been there as a journalist. I've really enjoyed them, and I enjoy what they're doing for the benefits of indie horror in theaters. So support them if you can. But again, if you're looking for more story, it may not be here. 5.5 out of 10 for me, but I'm glad I went to see it, and I will go see the next one, hoping there's a little more story to go with the awesome effects and the cool way this is shot. So kudos to Terrifier and their team. What did you think? If you saw it, tell me in the comments down below. If you have not seen it, go support them and support indie horror. I will talk to you guys soon. Please like, share, and subscribe to these deep dive videos, and I'll be coming back to you guys with more movies in theaters this October very soon. Take care and stay scared.